Have you ever looked at a brand new car and wondered, what's its expiration date? In an age of rolling computers and throwaway technology, modern vehicles feel designed to last just past their warranty. But it wasn't always this way. There was a time when the blue oval badge meant something more. It was a promise, a guarantee of toughness etched in steel. There are Ford trucks from the Nixon era still dragging hay bales through brutal Montana winters, and Mustangs that have outlived their original owners, still roaring to life with the turn of a key. Today, we're taking a journey back in time to uncover 10 legendary Fords that were engineered with immortality in mind, mechanical cockroaches that simply refuse to die. This is the story of the machines that defined what built Ford tough truly meant. Number 10. The Torque Titan, the 1992 to 1997 Ford F-Series 300 CI Straight 6. In an era defined by the rise of complex, high-revving V6 engines, the Ford 300 cubic inch Straight 6 was an automotive dinosaur, a relic from a bygone era. Its design was archaic, a simple pushrod overhead valve layout that traced its roots all the way back to 1965. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't sophisticated, and it certainly wasn't fast. But it was something far more important. It was immortal. By the time it found its home in the 9th generation F-Series, Ford had spent nearly 3 decades perfecting this engine. Every potential weakness had been identified and engineered out of existence. What remained was a masterpiece of industrial simplicity. It produced a modest 145 horsepower, a figure that modern 4-cylinders can easily surpass. But horsepower was never the point of the 300. Its legend was built on torque, a colossal 265 pound-feet of it, available right off idle. This wasn't an engine that screamed, it was an engine that grunted. It was born to do work, pulling stumps, hauling loads, and asking for more. The secret to its eternal life was its low-stress design. The long-stroke architecture meant the engine never had to work hard. It would lope along at highway speeds, barely breaking a sweat. Its most celebrated feature was its timing system. Instead of a rubber belt that needed replacing or a chain that could stretch, the 300 used a set of heavy-duty timing gears. These gears, bathed in engine oil, would outlast the truck itself, and likely the owner too. The intake manifold was cast as part of the cylinder head, creating a massive, single chunk of iron that eliminated a common failure point for gaskets. Fleet operators, farmers, and contractors adored this engine. Not only was it unstoppable, but it was also surprisingly efficient for its size, capable of achieving 20 miles per gallon on the highway. Maintenance was a dream. The enormous engine bay offered so much space you could practically stand inside it to work. These trucks rusted, as most from this era did, but the heart of the beast would just keep beating. 30 years after Ford retired it, the 300 Straight 6 continues to earn its keep on farms and job sites across the country. It will run badly longer than most engines will run at all. Number 9. The Million-Mile Workhorse, the 1987 to 1996 Ford F-250 divided by F-350, 7.3 liters IDI diesel. Long before the computerized complexity of the Power Stroke, Ford offered a diesel engine built on a different philosophy: absolute, unshakable simplicity. It was the 7.3-liter IDI diesel, sourced from International Harvester, and it was less of an engine and more of a geological formation. IDI stands for indirect injection. Unlike modern direct injection diesels that slam fuel into the cylinder at immense pressures, the IDI gently injected fuel into a pre-combustion chamber. This resulted in lower combustion pressures and far less stress on every internal component, from the pistons to the head gaskets. It was an agricultural-grade engine designed not for a pickup truck, but for medium-duty haulers and farm equipment that needed to run from sunrise to sunset without complaint. By today's standards, its output of 180 horsepower and 338 pound-feet of torque is pathetic. But those numbers don't tell the story. The story is told in the odometers. Seeing these trucks with 500,000 miles is not an anomaly, it's an expectation. 1 million miles? It has been documented multiple times. The engine's bottom end was massively overbuilt. The fuel system was purely mechanical, relying on the legendary Stanadyne DB2 injection pump, a marvel of clockwork precision that required no computers to function. If it broke, a skilled mechanic could fix it with hand tools. Its one weakness was a temperamental glow plug system that could make cold starts a chore, but once running, it was unstoppable. Paired with the bulletproof C6 automatic or the heavy-duty ZF 5-speed manual and sending power to the gargantuan Sterling 10.25 full-floating rear axle, the entire drivetrain was a monument to durability. They are slow, they are loud, and they ride like a covered wagon. But when the apocalypse finally comes, the last things moving on this planet will be cockroaches driving these IDI Fords. Number 8. The little truck that could. The 1983 to 1988 Ford Ranger 2.3 liters Lima engine. When Ford entered the compact truck wars against formidable Japanese rivals, it knew it needed a 4-cylinder engine that was both economical and utterly indestructible. They didn't design a new one, they reached into their parts bin and pulled out an old friend, the 2.3-liter Lima engine. This humble iron block iron head motor had been in service since 1974, powering everything from the Pinto to the Mustang. By the time it landed in the Ranger, it was a fully debugged, battle-hardened veteran. Its brilliance was not in its performance, a mere 88 horsepower, but in its clever, forgiving design. The Lima's secret weapon was its timing belt system. It was a non-interference engine. This is a critical detail. In most engines, if the timing belt snaps, the pistons will slam into the open valves, resulting in catastrophic and expensive engine failure. In the Lima, if the belt broke, the engine simply coasted to a stop, no damage. A new belt could be installed on the side of the road, and you'd be on your way. It was a get-out-of-jail-free card for neglectful owners. The engine itself was ridiculously overbuilt for the power it produced. Head gasket failures were virtually unheard of. The bottom end could happily run for 300,000 miles or more. The real key to the Lima Ranger's survival, however, was its personality, or lack thereof. It was never cool enough to be modified by street racers or fast enough to be abused. They were purchased as honest, no-frills work trucks, first cars for teenagers, and fleet vehicles for companies that valued uptime above all else. They were used, but rarely abused. They are the automotive equivalent of a loyal stray dog, not the prettiest or the fastest, but it will never, ever let you down. Number 7. The unsung hero of commerce, the 1961 to 1967 Ford Econoline van. Before the minivan became a symbol of suburban life, the van was a pure, unadulterated tool, and the first-generation Ford Econoline was arguably the most brilliant tool of its era. Based on the humble underpinnings of the Ford Falcon, its genius was its revolutionary and simple design. Its unibody construction saved weight and eliminated the problem of a separate, rust-prone frame. But the masterstroke was its cab-over layout, which placed the engine in a housing, or doghouse, between the front seats. This radical packaging accomplished two things. It gave the driver a commanding, panoramic view of the road, and, more importantly, it created a massive, completely flat, and uninterrupted cargo floor from the back of the seats to the rear doors. For the plumbers, electricians, and delivery companies of the 1,960 seconds, this was a game changer. The engines were the same reliable 6 cylinders from the Falcon, with the 170 cubic inch unit being the sweet spot. With just 101 horsepower, it was never stressed, happy to hum along for hundreds of thousands of miles with basic maintenance. Working on it was surprisingly easy. You just lifted the interior engine cover. You could practically change the spark plugs in a rainstorm without getting wet. These vans lived brutal lives. They were loaded to the gills, driven hard, and often left to rot. The ones that survived did so for one simple reason: they were almost impossible to kill. They are a cult classic today, a testament to a time when a vehicle was designed with a single purpose in mind: to work, day in and day out, without fail. Number 6. The accidental survivor, the 1965 to 1973 Ford Mustang 200 CI 6-cylinder. In the dazzling history of the Ford Mustang, all the glory goes to the fire-breathing V8 seconds. The K-Code 289, the Boss 302, the monstrous 429, these are the legends. But the true marathon runner of the classic Mustang lineup, the one most likely to still be humming along after 60 years, was the humble, often overlooked 200 cubic inch straight 6. They derisively called it the Secretary Special or the rental car motor. But those insults missed the point entirely. This engine, an evolution of the already bulletproof Falcon 6, was designed for a life of ease. With a gentle 120 horsepower, it was never stressed, never pushed to its limits. Its 7-main bearing crankshaft was an exercise in extreme overkill for the power it produced. It loafed along at highway speeds, a picture of mechanical serenity. What truly ensured its survival was not just its engineering, but its sociology. The V8 cars were bought by young men who raced them, modified them, and often crashed them into oblivion. The 6-cylinder cars were bought by people who needed stylish, reliable transportation. They were driven to church, to the grocery store, to the office. They were babied. By the time the collector market exploded and the V8 cars became priceless, the best preserved, lowest mileage originals were often the unloved 6-cylinders that had been preserved purely by accident. Paired with a simple 3-speed manual or the durable C4 automatic, the entire drivetrain was understressed and overbuilt. If you find one today that has escaped the almost obligatory V8 swap, you have found a true time capsule. Number 5. The Mobile Bank Vault, Lincoln Continental Mark III, IV, and V, 1970 to 1979. When you think of bulletproof reliability, a massive, gas-guzzling Lincoln luxury barge from the 1,970 seconds probably isn't the first thing that comes to mind. But you'd be wrong. Continental marks of this era were built to a standard of quality and durability that has long since disappeared from the automotive world. They were designed as personal bank vaults on wheels. Lincoln's reputation depended on these cars being quiet, smooth, and utterly reliable for its wealthy clientele. The cost of materials was a secondary concern. The structures were colossal. The body panels were made of heavy-gauge American steel. The interior was lined with genuine leather, real wood, and deep pile carpeting. Everything was oversized to the point of absurdity. The motors that operated the windows and seats were industrial strength units that could probably lift the car itself. Under that aircraft carrier-sized hood was the imposing 460 cubic inch V8, Ford's largest and most powerful big block engine. In the Lincoln, however, it was tuned for quiet, effortless torque, not power. It propelled the 5,000-pound, 2,267 kilograms car down the highway at 70 miles per hour, 112 kilometers per hour, with the engine barely revved above idle. This low-stress operation meant the engine would run forever with regular oil changes. Number 4. The mighty underdog, Ford Torino and Ranchero, 1968 to 1976, 351 Cleveland. In the pantheon of legendary Ford V8 seconds, the 351 Windsor gets all the love and recognition for its longevity. But for a brief, glorious period, Ford produced its more exotic, race-bred sibling, the 351 Cleveland. It was an engine with a performance pedigree, featuring massive ports, canted valves for better ventilation, and a bottom end built to withstand the rigors of Daytona's steep, banked courses. In high-performance applications, it could be demanding. But in its lightweight, 2-cylinder street format, found in the engine compartments of the standard Ford Torino and the Ranchero car-truck hybrid, this high-output engine was a caged lion. It barely broke a sweat. This low-stress environment made it nearly indestructible. The Torino and Ranchero were the working-class heroes of the Ford lineup. They were cheaper than full-size LTDs and more practical than a Mustang, built on solid, conventional chassis. They were marketed to families and business owners who needed reliable transportation that could also tow or haul when needed. The Cleveland V8 offered effortless power for everyday use. Its only real requirement was a constant supply of clean oil to protect its performance-oriented lubrication system. With that, these engines would run 300,000 miles without needing a rebuild. Number 3. The unbreakable trailblazer, the 1966 to 1977 Ford Bronco. Before the SUV became a sanitized suburban family hauler, it was a raw, honest-to-goodness utility vehicle. And the original Ford Bronco was the embodiment of that ethos. Forged as Ford's defiant answer to the Jeep CJ and International Scout, it was a masterpiece of simplicity and strength. Think of it as a hammer, brutally effective and almost impossible to break. Its profound beauty was in its absence of complexity. There were no delicate electronics to fail in the wilderness, no fussy emissions gear to clog up, no complicated computer systems to diagnose. It was just a simple, robust straight six or a rumbling V8 heart bolted to a manual transmission and a pair of unyielding solid axles. That legendary Dana 44 front axle, a component now sought after by serious off-roaders, could absorb levels of punishment that would snap modern independent suspensions like dry twigs. It came in 3 rugged flavors: wagon, half cab, and the doorless roadster, but all shared the same bulletproof DNA. The only true kryptonite for these early Broncos was frame rust. But if you could keep the tin worm at bay, these machines would be passed down through generations. Everything was manual: the locking hubs, the transmission, the steering on base models. The philosophy was simple: less to break means less will break. The four-wheel drive system was a testament to this, with a simple, gear-driven, cast-iron transfer case that could practically climb a wall. Parts are still plentiful, thanks to shared components with other Ford models. It was the kind of rugged, purposeful immortality that Detroit used to build. They truly don't make them like they used to, for better and for worse. Today's cars are safer, more comfortable, and infinitely more user-friendly. But will we be talking about them with the same reverence and awe in 50 years? Somehow, I doubt it. Now, I want to hear from you. This is where the community comes alive. Have you ever owned or driven any of these legends? Did you rely on an old 306 to get the job done, or explore the backcountry in a classic Bronco? Share your stories and experiences in the comments below. Tell us which of these Fords you trust for the apocalypse. If you enjoyed this journey through Ford's incredible history, do us a huge favor and hit that like button. And if you want more deep dives into the greatest automotive stories ever told, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Number 2. The Go Anywhere Family Hauler. The 1980 to 1996 Ford Bronco, full-size. While collectors today hunt for the smaller, first-generation Broncos, the real unsung heroes of the badge are the full-size models that roam the earth from 1980 to 1996. These weren't just SUVs, they were proper, body-on-frame trucks built on the legendary F-Series platform, blessed with the iconic removable fiberglass top for the ultimate open-air experience. This was Ford perfecting a proven formula. The drivetrain options were a greatest hits collection of Ford's most reliable and beloved power plants. You could get the torque-rich 300 straight six, the dependable 302 V8, or the muscular 351 Windsor V8 for those who needed to tow. These weren't just engines, they were institutions with decades of development behind them. They were bulletproof. But the Bronco's immortality came from more than just its engines. It was built on a foundation of rugged simplicity. It used the toughest nails, twin I-beam on 2 WD models, or twin traction beam on 4x4 seconds front suspension that, while not a rock-crawling champion, would outlast the pavement it drove on with minimal maintenance. The transfer cases were manually shifted, gear-driven mechanical units like the Borg-Warner 1356 no-temperamental electronic actuators, or fragile vacuum lines to fail you when you're deep in the wilderness. It was a system that worked every single time. Starting in the mid-80 seconds, Ford finally cracked the code on rust prevention with the use of galvanized steel body panels. And the best part? It was, for all intents and purposes, an F-150 with a different body. Engines, transmissions, axles, and suspension components were all shared with the best-selling vehicle in America. That means parts today are cheap, plentiful, and every mechanic in the country knows how to work on one. These Broncos are still climbing mountains and exploring backwoods trails today, 30 years later, proving that sometimes the simplest solution is the most enduring. Number 1. The Genesis of Endurance. The 1948 to 1952 Ford F-Series trucks. This is it, the one that started it all, the Genesis. Ford's first dedicated post-war truck platform, the original F1. When it launched in 1948, its mission was simple and profound: to build a pickup that would rebuild America and last forever. Ford succeeded beyond any wildest dreams. The heart of this legend was the venerable flathead V8. By 1948, Ford had been building and refining the flathead for 16 years. Every flaw had been corrected, every weakness addressed. It was as simple as a rock and almost as difficult to eliminate. Without complex overhead valves, it was a design that tolerated neglect and abuse that would destroy a modern engine in minutes. It ran hot, with fouled spark plugs, and even with kerosene in an emergency. It was the very definition of mechanical resilience. But the pickup's true immortality lay in its over-the-top construction in every aspect. The chassis was composed of colossal ladders of thick steel. The body panels were made of high-strength metal, capable of withstanding a beating. The transmission was a simple 3-speed manual with an extremely low first gear, designed not for speed but for pure, unstoppable pulling power. The suspension consisted solely of reinforced leaf springs at all 4 corners, no complex control arms or ball joints to wear out. These trucks were never truly retired. They went from being primary work trucks on construction sites to secondary trucks on farms, hunting trucks in the woods, lawn ornaments, and now, finally, invaluable restoration projects. And they are absolutely unstoppable. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, keep your oil and tires changed.